Attention all freedom fighters. We are anonymous. There are a lot of very important things going on around the world, and we have things to say on all of them, but today we want to focus on one thing in particular: net neutrality. Today's date is February 26, 2015, and you will see this date floating around as a watermark. It's a permanent record to when this video was made. This is a very historic date. It's the day the FCC voted to grant themselves authority over the internet. The mainstream media will hardly talk about it at all, but this is one of the most important events in the history of our nation. Nobody in the right mind wanted corporations such as Comcast to have any authority over who wins and loses the bandwidth. Most of Anonymous, including myself, did not want that. The internet has been working fine for decades, and we wanted it to remain that way, completely free, and a level playing field for all. No censorship, and no control by corporations, no traffic throttling. This is what everybody wanted and expected. It's what you were wanting when you wrote the FCC and asked for net neutrality. But it's not what you got. In 2010, the FCC, under the guidance of Mr. Obama, decided to hatch a plan that would result in a government takeover of the internet. Allow the government to decide which companies would have a monopoly, which alternative media would be allowed to report news, what network traffic would or would not be allowed to exist, such as Tor traffic. To be able to apply international treaties such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CISPA, ACTA, SOTA, PITA, etc., etc. The FCC called this plan net neutrality. It's the same name, but entirely different meaning. So when you and everybody else wrote the FCC and demanded net neutrality, they simply applied their own version of it, with plausible deniability. All the claims from the FCC that this plan would only keep companies such as Comcast from restricting bandwidth is true, at least for the beginning. But that can all be summed up on a single page, yet the entire document is well over 300 pages. Congress could have enacted a law that would have done the same thing, but they failed to act in a 5-year period.
I use the phrase, if this deal goes through, because this is exactly the sort of anti-competitive behavior that the Department of Justice and the FCC are supposed to stop. And what is even more ludicrous is that this is happening when Comcast and NBC should be on their best behavior. Right now, they're under close scrutiny by 2 federal agencies, the FCC and the DOJ. Yet they seem to be making even more bold-faced power grabs without any concern about government oversight. But in addition to the Comcast-NBC merger, what is also before the FCC is a new set of proposed rules that will make it easier for large media conglomerates like Comcast to do nothing short of controlling the internet. The chairman of the FCC is calling this a net neutrality proposal. But let's be clear, this is not real net neutrality. I believe this is one of the biggest issues facing our country today. Let me take a step back and explain what net neutrality is. Put simply, it is the idea that big corporations shouldn't be able to decide who wins or loses on the internet. It's the idea that the internet should be a level playing field for everyone, from a blogger to a media conglomerate, from a small business person to a powerful corporation. I believe that net neutrality is the free speech issue of our time.
Now let's get to the heart of the matter. Whenever a military force invades a country, the first thing they do is seize control or destroy all communications. Most of U.S. communications is already under control, but the internet is an exception. Censorship has existed on the internet for a few years now, but on the most part anybody can use it to communicate freely and in a variety of ways. In the event of a revolution, for example, patriots would have their communications already cut off. This is a vital piece of their ability to revolt. It's at least as important as the right to keep and bear arms, and is far more important than vaccines, ISIS, or immigration, foreign airline crashes, or deflated footballs combined. Yet the mainstream media will hardly say a thing about it in the next week or two. Wait and see for yourself. Similar events happened in World War II. The Nazis controlled forms of communications and education by burning the books that were available to the public. The FCC controls of the internet are the 21st century equivalent of burning books. Over the next several months and years, the FCC will begin leveraging their control to require cooperation from the internet service providers. Authorities will no longer be required to have a warrant to obtain records of your activities, and the ISP shall be required to maintain those records. Your access to the internet will soon be taxed. You will eventually be required to have a national ID in order to log in and use the internet and its gated services. You will not be able to have a blog or be a news service without a license. Political speech will be censored even more than it is now. International treaties will be applied to you. Your right to free speech will in effect be void, or at least limited to be seen and heard only by a select few. The children of Nazi Germany were programmed, indoctrinated into accepting government control, and the children of the 21st century are also being indoctrinated by a number of means, including the use of Common Core, We still think peaceful solutions can be achieved, and we encourage you to think outside the box and find ways to get control of this out of the hands of the FCC, perhaps by working directly with the internet service providers. The people of Nazi Germany only had a few newspapers, radio, and some books to learn from history, and no recent events to learn from, but we in the 21st century have the internet. We have the recent history of World War II, and we have no excuses.
Please, let's go. They mustn't see us.
It doesn't matter, my angel. Whatever shall come, you mustn't be scared anymore. For us, the war is as good as lost. It doesn't matter. In 20 years, in 50 years, we're going to be the masters everywhere. Not obviously. But you will find governments performing acts that are bizarre. Things we would have done, as if they were executing our orders. And then you will realize that our defeat was only an illusion.
The question is, are you going to repeat history or learn from it? We encourage you to download and make copies of this video so you can learn from the history and know that Anonymous predicted these events correctly. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We are anonymous. Expect us